Welcome, everyone. This is what probably will be considered to be um, I don't know if it'll be a weekly or daily reminder, but I figured, I like talking to people, and sometimes I have a lot of, you know, bits of wisdom that I think help me get by and get through to the day-to-day grind, depending on what that day-to-day grind is. So this is a way to shed some light to some degree, not a full degree, but to some degree about who I am, because I realize that sometimes you think people know you, but then you realize they don't know you as much as you think they do, or they have not taken the time to get to know who you are. So they only have a snapshot of who they think you are. And people is nosy on social media, and they want to know, even the projection of who you appear to be is not usually who people really are, but everything that you guys have seen in me is who I am 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll try not to make these long, but I figured I would get this first one out the way. I have experience making content, but I figured I would start the first episode of whatever this is. I don't even want to give it a name, because in the past I've had many names. I've had the David Jonathan Perception during the pandemic. I have experience in radio. I have experience as a musician over the last, 30 years. So, with all that being said, I really don't know why I'm letting people into my thought processes, because people are very judgmental. But I guess I'll start off with allowing me to reintroduce myself. So for those of you who do not know me very clearly and concisely, my name is David Jonathan Hewlett. Of course, you don't see my my full last name there, probably on the bottom of your screen, but David Jonathan is my real name, which is funny because most people know me as Teaspoon. And for those that know me as Teaspoon, don't be confused on what to call me when you see me. If you knew me as Teaspoon, call me Teaspoon. But if you understood the growth that it took me to abandon the name Teaspoon, and you would prefer to call me by my real name, then call me David. Call me David Jonathan. Doesn't matter. David Jonathan together collectively is what I usually would respond to, because as a kid growing up, everybody called me David Jonathan. David Jonathan, did you do such and such? David Jonathan. So it sounds like what kind of person would have two first names, right? But that's what it is. That's just what it is for me. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and I have moved away from Buffalo, New York 4 different times. Just trying to find a career for myself. There's so many other parts to my story that we can get into, and I guess as these develop, and if I see anybody has an interest in what I have to say, then we'll cross those bridges when we get there. I have been a musician my entire life existence. Started playing drums when I was 4 years old, and I guess the story would start a little bit before that, because my grandfather on my mother's side was a blues pianist, and he used to have a huge big back upright piano that he would have in his apartment, and we all lived in the projects, Kenfield, Langfield projects. I say Kenfield, Langfield because some of our family was scattered in Langfield, and some of us was scattered in Kenfield. I grew up in the Kenfield side, but I had family that was right on the Langfield side across the street. Now, my grandfather, he was on the Kenfield side, and he had this huge piano in his crib. And, you know, when my parents had to go take care of some business, you know, whether it was working or my dad was tinkering away, you know, I would go over to my grandfather's house, and he had a whole bunch of things in his apartment. It was like, for me, it was like very interesting to go over my grandfather's house because he was a former Pullman porter, and so he had a fascination with trains. So he had train sets, and I mean like authentic train sets too. I'm talking about like the die-cast joints that were heavy. And he would have a whole little track and everything set up, and he would sit there on the floor with me and set up these trains. And just to entertain me, I think he was just happy to be a grandfather. But then I started to develop a liking to music, and he had all these pianos and bongos and you name it, just all types of instruments. Harmonica, he played harmonica as well. And he would try to show me blues chords, and that really is what started the journey of music for me. By the time I got to age 4, I was already holding down church service. And there's a lot of kids with YouTube and cameras now. You know, everybody's got cameras on their phone. So, you know, back then, to own a camcorder was like a privilege, you know, and we couldn't afford that at the time. And but I literally was 4 years old, holding down church services. My mom and my aunt were both evangelists, and they did a lot of outreach ministry type of work. Not so much big church industry, big church corporation, big church entities, but, you know, grassroots, you know, like, you know, in the fray kind of church work, helping people that needed, you know, food, shelter, prayer, so on and so forth. And their adventures during that time led to us going to California. Two of my other aunts also lived in California, so that made a good, you know, go-between for us to go from Buffalo to California on a regular basis. So I guess when everybody realized I could play drums there was a revival going on at a church, and this particular church was actually tied to a radio station in California, around the Los Angeles area. And my mom and us, you know, I guess their drummer didn't show up. And they asked me, I guess they said, wow, our drummer's not here. And my mom volunteered basically and said, well, my son can play the drums. And, you know, people looked at me, which I was a really small kid at the time, and they were like, nah, this kid can't play no drums, you know. And, you know, she said, no, he really can. He can hold it down. And she had faith in me to believe that I could. I think she really felt like I could. And I sat down. We talking old school church. Like, what's that name? Jesus. What's that name? Jesus. 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 Like, you know, old school where you got the little mats on the floor, you know, the little prayer mats that they will pull out when you knelt. Old school, you know. And if there was no organist, yo, guess what? You're playing the drums just to you in the audience. That's it. You held the beat down. But that's where my start came from. And I played for that church that day, and they have recorded that I was playing. And they had for the longest time, you know, we never could get a copy of that recording. And if we did, I believe it got lost. But there was a recording of me holding down the church service, grown man playing. Little boys sound like a grown man playing drums. So that began my journey and my hunger, I would say, for being a musician. Now, I've said that to say this. This whole little story and setup for you. It took me a long time to come into myself. and understand and be comfortable with who myself really was. I ain't giving out my age. Nah, you'll keep guessing about that. But I'm still young enough to know, but old enough to have enough experience, and with all the travels and places I've been to realize that no matter if it's being a musician or whatever you want to be, or that you aspire to be, you know, it's good to have people to look up to, but always remember that you have to find your own path, because people will pigeonhole you or one-dimensionalize you into just being a certain way. You know, you're this person. For me, you know, the annoyance of it was that I was Teaspoon, and I never anticipated that I would become Teaspoon. You know, when you're given a nickname, it's usually given to you by other people. I never gave myself the nickname Teaspoon. It's just something that kind of took on a life of itself based off of one event that happened in my life at a drum competition, which I would say would be the introduction of who I was as a drummer to the Buffalo scene. Because I didn't belong to no major church, you know, where I can be regularly showcased. I wasn't regularly going to sheds and stuff like that. I knew people that were, and you would hear of their names, you know, out in the atmosphere, because, you know, word would travel that way, you know, but there was no YouTube yet, you know. So I would hear about people and this, that, and the other, and, you know, I felt like I had enough skills up to that point, and I was always very, you know, whimsically interested in music. You know, by 15 years old, I was taking bus trips to New York City without my parents' knowledge, because everybody would say the way to becoming successful at this was to go to New York. And I didn't know nothing about New York, and my mom used to watch a whole bunch of crazy, weird crime stories all the time, you know, like Unsolved Mysteries and Rescue 911 and all these crazy stories. So it would be like some psycho story come on where some boy was like playing in the toy aisle, and some person lured them, say, "Hey, little boy, I have a puppy," something like that. And then next thing you know, this little boy gets in the car or the van with the creepy dude, and next thing you know, his body's chopped up somewhere. It's weird, right? So my mom would be terrified, horrified, if she knew I was taking trips to the city and saying that I was staying with my friends locally at their house. But it was the only way for me at the time, you know, to see the world in a way musically that I would be able to relate to, because I just couldn't see what I was looking for within my own music scene at 15. Couldn't see it. At the time, also, I had a lot of other things going on personally in my life, coming from a strange life, which, you know, well, that's probably something to cover on a whole completely different episode. Depends on how much I want you to know me, and depends on how much you care to know. But I needed to go see something else other than what I saw. Which brings me to the whole purpose of this video and more videos like this. Once again, I said it already. Don't measure yourself by other people's standards. You know, make sure that you're putting the work in for whatever it is that you want to do. If you're young and putting the work in to being a great musician, then do that. Don't believe everybody else, because maybe people will project their failures on you. A lot of people said, you know, well, you can't make a living as a musician. You'll be a bum. You'll be a homeless person, you know, a starving artist. And don't get me wrong, I feel like a lot of musicians do have that period that you go through of being a starving artist. I feel like that's a part of the real struggle and paying your dues to becoming a musician. How do you turn that into a song, or music? So, once again, even looking back on my life, if I would have saw that and understood that more younger, I feel like I would have probably even gone farther than I've already gone. And I feel like I've gone pretty far. With that being said, in conclusion, trust yourself, trust your instincts, trust what you have to say and what you have to bring to the table. And if people still are trying to make you go in the way that they feel comfortable with knowing you, then that's a personal problem for them. That's not a personal problem for you. And I don't know, that don't have to just apply to music. That could apply to anything that you are aspiring to be. If you're being a musician, if you do have aspirations to become a lawyer or go to college, don't let nobody tell you that, oh, you shouldn't go to college because there's no more jobs out here. That may be true for some. That's not true for all. And the only way you're going to understand what is best for you is going to be for you to get out there and take a chance. Take a chance. And sometimes when you take those chances, you might fall on your face. Flat on your face. Like, I've taken chances that have fallen straight right on my head, yo. But it's how you recover. It is definitely about how you recover. How do you recover after you hit your head? Do you lay there and say, oh, it's woe is me, and then you just give up, and then that's just it for you? Or are you hungry enough to dust yourself off, say, toss me some ibuprofen, and keep moving, keep going, go for the goal, and people will call you crazy, and people will say a lot of things about you. The people can be cruel, and they will say a lot of things that are cruel and will either diffuse your dream or light your dream. Find the people who believe in what you're doing and keep those people close to you, because they don't have any other agenda other than encouraging you to continue. I truly hope that what I've said today can shed some light on who I am a little bit more. And if you have any comments, questions, things that you'd like to leave, please feel free. I'm not prone to not answering anything. I'm pretty much an open book. And if it's something I don't want to answer, I ain't got to answer it. You feel me? Like, subscribe, all that good stuff if you feel like it. If you don't, I don't care anymore. I'd rather just come on and offer some advice, because I didn't have any musicians that I wouldn't say none, but I had a very limited amount of people who gave me the encouragement I needed. So I needed to hold on to those communications and those positive things that the positive feedback, even constructive criticism that was given to me to help shape who I became as an artist. With that being said, peace and light. Amani na Mwaga. And keep your head to the sky. Peace.